And the numbers don't lie.
The vast majority are vaccinated.
Body cameras are coming into focus. City Hall is suddenly hinting Portlanders should expect a plan before the holidays. When should they expect their police to actually wear the cameras? That's a different story. But first, Portland's housing crisis.
I still didn't believe it until I got the keys in my hands.
And this time, it's good news.
Congratulations, voters. We did it together.
Here's the story. Good evening. I'm Maggie Vespa. This is The Story, and this is progress amid Portland's housing crisis. Let's pan around and show everybody. This is Rockwood Village in Gresham. Hundreds of units, brand new, all affordable housing. And clearly, based on the construction crews, you can see they're still going up. They want to finish these as fast as possible and get people moved in. So how did this happen? And why now? Well, remember that affordable housing bond, that historically large affordable housing bond that you, the Metro voters, approved in 2018? Well, the money is in, and clearly it's getting spent. And that's tonight's big story.
Trying to get an apartment, it's getting harder and harder and harder.
Amid a housing crisis, hope is hard to come by. No one knows that better than Aralis Daisy Mejia.
Which floor are you on? It's the first one.
A single mom of 4 boys, Mejia was born in Mexico, but has lived most of her life in Portland.
Hello. Say hi to the camera.
Last month, at the age of 38, she moved into her first apartment.
Oh my God, it was so amazing. I still didn't believe it until I got the keys in my hands. It is huge. Now I can cook, for my kids.
Mejia found this brand new 2-bedroom in Gresham's Rockwood Village after searching for more than a year. Before that, she'd spent years staying at a friend's place and at times sleeping in her car while her kids stayed with their dad. Repercussions of a tough divorce.
I didn't want my kids to be going through that with me, because when I did it, it was myself.
Last year, she decided she and her boys needed a stable home. Mejia works in customer service, but was blown away by the high cost of rent in Portland. And that wasn't the only barrier.
I have to have first month, last month of rent deposit and other things, And I didn't have a lot of things on my name. So it was kind of hard to prove that my credit was good.
Mejia was struggling to find that hope until she found Rockwood Village, a brand new complex of affordable units willing to overlook a history of bad credit or waive first and last month's rent. Little did Mejia know this complex was the result of years of momentum, and it started in 2018.
This is an interesting issue, the Metro housing bond.
That November, local voters made history, approving Measure 26199, a 20-year, nearly $653 million affordable housing bond. The promise? To boost affordable housing inventories in Clackamas, Washington, and Multnomah counties, adding more units with subsidized rents and helping more people break the cycle of sleeping on local streets and in shelters. Many of those people wait for an affordable housing unit for 1 to 2 years on average. The area just doesn't have enough. Fast forward to now, the money is in, and it's getting spent.
And we will be seeing tangible examples of that.
Yeah, it's so exciting.
Metro Council President Lynn Peterson is cheering the progress more than anyone. She says Rockwood Village is a perfect example. This massive brand new complex near Southeast 185th and Yamhill has 224 units, all affordable housing. This one is a 4-bedroom, big enough for a family. Rockwood's construction was paid for in part by the Metro Affordable Housing Bond. $5 million went to this project. Peterson says they're moving people in unit by unit as soon as they open up.
The situation on our streets didn't happen overnight, and it won't get solved overnight. The truth is, housing ends homelessness. So we're focused on helping people permanently get out of homelessness.
That help is getting spread out across the metro area.
Congratulations, voters. We did it together.
Catherine Harrington is the chair of Washington County. She heard we were looking into how the Metro Affordable Housing Bond money is being spent and asked to meet us here.
Oh, they're beautiful.
This is Viewfinder, another affordable housing complex in Tigard. You can see from our tour, it's still going up. But when it's done, it will offer 81 units of affordable housing. Metro poured $11 million of bond funding into this project. Harrington agrees it can't open fast enough. For 3 years, she knows voters have been wondering, where's that money going?
Unfortunately, it takes a little while to get development plans approved and to get all the financing figured out and all the contract workers set up. But it's happening, folks, and we have a pipeline now.
In fact, Viewfinder, which is scheduled to open this year, is one of 7 affordable housing projects funded by the Housing Bond and currently under construction across the metro area. Others include Fuller Road Station, which will offer 100 units in Clackamas County, and River Place in Portland, that will offer 177 units. Overall, the 20-year bond is expected to add 3,900 units of affordable housing to the metro region, with hundreds opening each year. Everyone involved says it couldn't be more needed.
I think one of the things we sort of say in our industry, unfortunately, is if you build it, they will come.
Jessica Woodruff is with Community Development Partners, a major affordable housing builder in Oregon, responsible for Rockwood Village and Viewfinder. She says the Metro Housing Bond is locally a game changer, and she hopes more communities follow suit, tackling a crisis that's growing everywhere.
I mean, it's a statewide issue. It isn't just an urban issue. And Oregon really rose to the occasion, and I believe at this point that Oregon actually is investing more per capita at the local level than those other states. So it's been a huge shift.
And with that, I'm back in the studio. It's like magic. All right, so a big question that came up in our newsroom. When we say affordable housing, like how affordable are we talking? What's the actual price? Well, I got her permission. In Erlis's case, she's paying $1,470 for that new 2-bedroom unit. That's the actual cost. She's paying that full cost because she makes 70% of the average median income. If she made less than that, then she would pay less rent by qualifying for more government assistance. It's a complicated formula, different from complex to complex, city to city, county to county, but in short, rents in these units across the board are lower because of that Metro bond, and more units are coming online, especially for Portland's poorest, people who make less than 30% of the average median income. And by the way, one last thing. I want to say thank you to Erlis for sharing her story with us. She told me because she's found stable housing, she's feeling better about herself. She's feeling stronger, and she decided to go back to college. She's currently enrolled in a medical assistance program, and she expects to graduate next year. Another topic that's come up time and again is body cameras. Portland, as we've reported, is the largest police force in the country that does not wear them. And now that could change. The mayor has pledged his support. And as of last week, City Commissioner Mingus Mapps was making some pretty bold predictions.
I fully expect body cams to be a done deal by the end of October.
Well, wouldn't you know it, things have now changed a bit, at least. Investigative reporter Kyle Aboshi has been keeping a close eye on this topic for us. And Kyle, so now things are kind of being pushed back.
A little bit, maybe a few weeks. This all really hinges on the fall budget. That's been pushed back 2 weeks. Basically, the mayor and the city council are trying to figure out how to spend an extra $62 million in the budget. On that list, we're told, is body cameras. City commissioners appear to support the idea of equipping Portland police officers with body-worn cameras. And as we've been reporting, Portland is the only police agency of its size that doesn't have them. They figure it'll cost around $2.9 million to get a program up and running.
Okay. Obviously, that's a huge amount of money. Funding is really important, to say the least. It's sometimes the hard part. But like for people sitting at home, when will we actually see Portland police officers walking around town wearing these body cameras?
Yeah, and that's the big question. Even Commissioner Mapps, he couldn't answer when we talked to him last week.
I can put aside the money to get them bought by the end of October. By the time we develop the policies to get them onto people's shoulders and whatnot, that's a different process. But one of the ways we can lock that in is to buy the cameras, and then we can figure out the details later.
Keep in mind, there are a couple moving parts here. One, the city and police union, they're in negotiations. Body cams have come up. The police officers union supports them, but there's real debate over who can see the video and when. Also, the city is in mediation with the U.S. Department of Justice. The feds, they're pushing the city of Portland to get body cams as part of a 2014 settlement agreement over police reform. So to answer your question, we don't really know when officers will start wearing body cameras. The first step really, though, is funding, and that could come in about 2 weeks.
All right, Kyle Laboshi for us. Kyle, thank you. Hey, by the way, on last night's show, we had another story from Kyle about Portland's historic spike in gun violence. Police had told Kyle they think about half the shootings in the city are gang related. The rest, they estimate, are connected to crimes like robbery, road rage, domestic violence, or disputes within the homeless community. We got a lot of feedback from you, the viewers. I want to show you some now. A lot of you are really frustrated. Ron wrote it and said, I have lived here 20 years and never seen it this bad. The mayor and commissioners keep talking and the criminals keep shooting. City Hall, he wrote, is paralyzed by fear. And Ed emailed, quote, the real sadness is that one cannot do anything to improve the situation, leaving one with a sense of hopelessness. City Hall has taken the phone off the hook and thrown up their hands and adopted a "it is what it is" attitude. Ron and Ed, thank you very much. Keep sending in your thoughts, your questions, your comments, anything you want to say about the stories that we have on this show. Your feedback really is what drives our coverage. So find us on social media or email the story at kgw.com. All right, coming up tonight, the threat of losing a job and a paycheck was enough, it turns out, for a lot of people to get the COVID vaccine. But what about a position that doesn't pay, like a volunteer fire department in rural Oregon?
Many of them consulted with their doctors again. Some got vaccinated. Actually, most got vaccinated.
Yeah, sounds like it worked too. We'll talk about how the state's mandate did indeed work in Warrenton when the story continues. Welcome back again. Keep sending in your comments and your questions to the story at kgw.com. Reach out on social media. We are reading your messages during the show. We have a team on that. And by the way, I want to remind you about the Hey Help campaign. This week, we are asking you to consider donating to Portland Opportunities Industrialization Center and Rosemary Anderson High School, also known as POIC and RAHS. They provide workforce training and career placement for communities of color, as well as violence reduction programs. To donate, just hold up your phone's camera to that QR code like you're going to take a photo of it. It'll take you to a donation page. You can also just skip that and go to kgw.com/heyhelp if that's easier. And remember, this is a micro donation drive, so feel free to give any amount if you can, no matter how small. All right, so the deadline for the vaccine mandate has come and gone. It was yesterday for most state workers. And the people who refused to get a vaccine and weren't successful in getting an exemption are now out of work. They protested, they striked, they threatened, and in some cases filed lawsuits. They made dire predictions about shortages of workers. But as the data is quickly showing, vaccine mandates actually work. In Washington, 92% of state workers got vaccinated before yesterday's deadline. As you can see, the numbers are in. Most of the school staff is vaccinated, but some districts did say they had to fire some school bus drivers statewide. That demographic took a bit of a hit. About 90% of the Department of Corrections staff is vaccinated, and 93% of state patrol in Washington got the vaccine. 127 workers with the State Patrol left their jobs rather than getting the shot. We saw some of that yesterday. Again, that's 127, though, out of more than 2,000 employees. Still, they're protesting. Recently fired troopers made a display of their shoes and their hats at the Capitol building in Olympia today. You can see that photo. And they're doing that to show support for, again, those 127 who lost their jobs. In Oregon, a similar situation. The vaccine mandate largely worked. The Oregonian reporting 80% of state workers had been vaccinated as of last Friday, and 10% got exemptions. But thousands of workers who are covered by unions got an extension until the end of November. So that group is still kind of out there. Oregon State Patrol says 2 troopers resigned in protest to the mandate. 2. On top of that, 11 more are on leave. Healthcare systems also say they had a big jump in vaccination rates, most of them getting near 90%. So, as it turns out, when your job is on the line, a lot of people will decide to go ahead and get a vaccine. But what about if you aren't getting paid because you still do you still have to get vaccinated? Of course you do. And the mayor of Warrenton said he was ready to declare a state of emergency, fearing he would lose most of his volunteer emergency first responders. They fell under that mandate category, even though they were volunteers. As it turns out, most of them ended up getting the vaccine.
Many of them consulted with their doctors again. Some got vaccinated. Actually, most got vaccinated. The vast majority are vaccinated. We actually ended up having people step forward hearing about the crisis looming, and three of them actually had certifications that were immediately transferable. And so they stepped up, and we actually have a total now, as of today, 5 additional members of our fire department.
That's the mayor there. When we first talked to him, you might remember, he was really worried because more than half of the volunteer emergency responders in Warrenton said they did not want the vaccine, were not going to get the vaccine. But along the way, they changed their minds. And the mayor says that happened because they had support, not judgment.
You know, they're volunteers. So this isn't like an employee where you can just say, you're going to do this. And, you know, if you don't, something's going to happen, you know. So there was just a lot of space. We just provided a lot of space, a lot of listening, and just kept at it. But I also, teamed up with the fire chief to make sure that there was political support for them to have that space. And also, my main role was to inform the public of what was about to occur, to not condemn the volunteers because they've been with us doing this, responding to these calls since the beginning. Nothing's really changed other than a rule has been passed, you know. And that support, as well as that open space that the chief gave, combined helped them come to a different conclusion for most of them. And as a result, they move forward.
Again, support, not judgment, he says. So we do know about other small towns and rural areas that are concerned about shortages, and we're checking in on them. We also want to hear from you if you know of any places where there is a problem. And with that, let's pivot from COVID vaccines to COVID tests, because even though cases are going down, tests are still in high demand. And you can go to a testing site like the one OHSU is running at the Expo Center, but you might have to wait a while for the results. Another option, you can buy at-home tests and get the results really fast. But the question is, are they accurate? Here's Brandon Lewis with tonight's Verify report.
Demand for COVID-19 tests remains high, and manufacturers are trying to make it easier for people to get tested. At-home tests are one alternative that's gaining traction, but one Verify viewer texted us to ask if they're just as good as getting one done at a test site. So let's verify. Are at-home rapid COVID-19 tests as accurate as rapid tests done on site? Our sources are the FDA, the CDC, Nebraska Medicine, 3 at-home test manufacturers, and Dr. Sarah Lynn Mark with the American Medical Women's Association. First, you should know there are 2 types of at-home tests. One is a PCR, which requires you to take a sample, mail it in, and wait a few days. The other is an antigen, or rapid test, because it gives you results in about 15 minutes, and is what we're focusing on today. Early in the pandemic, rapid tests got a bad rap, but doctors say they are much more accurate today and are still improving.
Over time, these rapid tests have become a lot more accurate. They're certainly easy to do, and the results can be returned relatively quickly.
Antigen tests collect a sample with a nasal swab or saliva to detect the presence of COVID-19's viral nucleic acid. Studies submitted to the FDA show home tests, when administered correctly, are about 85% accurate at detecting positive cases and around 98% accurate at detecting negative cases. Generally, they work best at detecting COVID-19 in people who are already symptomatic. That's similar to what a CDC study found when it looked into antigen tests administered by professionals. So it's true. At-home COVID-19 rapid tests are as effective as rapid tests done on site when administered correctly.
The important point here is the test will only be as good as you obtain the samples.
Regardless of how you collect an antigen sample, Nebraska Medicine says the tests are not perfect and encourages people to check with their doctor to see if the results need to be confirmed with a more accurate PCR test. With Go Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
Our thanks to the Verify team there. If you have any other questions about COVID tests or vaccines, send them our way to thestory@kgw.com. In the meantime, remember this, that huge explosion in Northwest Portland that leveled a building and damaged a lot of other businesses on the block. Windows shattered blocks away. Well, it may be hard to believe. It's been 5 years since that happened. We'll dive into the KGW vault when the story continues. Welcome back. We always ask for your questions, so now here's a question for you. How many of you were living in Portland 5 years ago? And how many of you were living or were just near Northwest 23rd and Gleason? If you were, then I'm sure you remember, and I'm sure plenty more people remember, the huge explosion that happened on that block that day back in 2016. It happened after a construction crew accidentally hit a gas line. The blast destroyed a building. 8 people were hurt, but thankfully no one died. So let's take a look back at that day, that insane day 5 years ago in the KGW vault.
There's a gigantic, kaboom, and it shook my apartment.
We have one firefighter down across the street at the corner from the apartment.
Glass exploded out of all of the bottom level while we were walking down, and we basically covered and then ran.
It blew me off my chair sitting in my apartment right here. I mean, I came right off my chair. I thought it was an earthquake.
Now we have no building. So it's a lot to take in.
There's so much devastation there, and there's a building that's gone and now is a pile of smoldering rubble.
Kind of feels like a mini natural disaster in this 1 block radius.
There are a lot of crying and screaming and running and, terrified people. Rubble. It's total rubble, like a war zone.
Everybody kept saying that, right? Like it was like a war zone. Well, that was 5 years ago today. This is that block today. 5 years later, we went down there to see what has changed since then. That was the building that was destroyed. It's now been replaced by a new one full of businesses, apartments and condos. Some of the other businesses that were on that street that were damaged have also changed hands. And there are still 6 ongoing lawsuits against Loy Clark Pipeline, the company that hit that gas line. 4 of them are from people who were injured, seeking millions of dollars in damages. All right, keep sending in your questions and your comments to thestory@kgw.com. Find us on social media, all that good stuff. We're going to finish the story after this. Let's wrap it up with one more question. This one from James. He emailed, are the wildfires out? Short and sweet. James, that's a great question. And yeah, we really haven't updated you on any fires burning in Oregon since the summer, really. And that's because, frankly, there aren't any updates to give. In fact, the last official update from the National Wildfire Coordinating Group for, say, the Bootleg Fire was on August 15th. Remember, that was the one that burned more than 400,000 acres in southern Oregon. And as of then, that fire was 100% contained. Now, to James's question, that does not mean it's completely out. A lot of these big fires still burn until we get big rainstorms in the fall and winter. But that doesn't mean they're spreading or that they pose any danger. That's that update page if you want to check it out. All right, pick up your phone. Follow us on Twitter at The Story KGW. On Instagram, same address. You can email thestory@kgw.com. We love your questions and your comments. With that, that is the end of the story. So let's bring in Laurel Porter now. Hey, Laurel.
Hey, Maggie, we look forward to more of the story tomorrow. But for now, the news at 6:30 starts now.